Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Over to you, Claire.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to, I suppose, what is the halfway point of Public Service Transformation Week 2024. I'd like to thank the National Standards Authority for hosting this webinar. The Public Service Transformation team are very grateful to you for opening your online doors, and indeed to everybody who's joining us now for this event, which is showcasing the theme of transformation in action. Transformation Week is a chance to highlight the breadth of innovation and transformation which has taken place across Ireland. This year's theme is rooted in the Better Public Service Strategy and focuses on harnessing digital technologies, modernising the public sector processes and fostering collaboration across sectors. We are navigating a rapidly changing world, so the need for agile, citizen-centric services has never been more urgent. This week offers a platform for all of us to exchange ideas, showcase best practice, and build the future of the public service delivery. The ISO 56000 family is now a bulwark for the profession and practice, providing a lens and a trusted actor for leaders and their teams. With the publication last month of ISO 56001 Innovation and Management Systems Requirements, it's timely to consider what these standards do for us, why they're important, how powerful they are for the public service and for enabling others to innovate. At the heart of the Better Public Service Strategy is a commitment to transforming government services to meet the evolving needs of citizens and communities. The strategy emphasises the importance of accessibility, transparency and resilience, recognising that public services must be responsive to the challenges of the 21st century. So before I hand over to the hosts, I'd like to remind you can post questions in the Q&A on the top of your screen there, and we'll get to them before we finish. So our leaders today are Eoin Flavin, who's Ireland's leading contributor to the 56000 family and Vice Chair of the NSAI Advisory Committee and Innovation Standards. We have Duncan Cleary, a leading building international capacity building for revenue and for remarkable history of innovating in our public sector and beyond. And finally, last but not least, Barry Cox, NSAI Standards Officer, Committee Manager for the NSAI Innovation Standards Committee. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you guys.
You're very good, Claire. Very, very well done. Very swiftly and sensibly and simply done. We'll see if we can keep that tone for the next hour. I'm not going to take time off, Barry. All I wanted to say is to give you people, an expectation, our audience. Thanks for joining us. We've taken an hour. What we're trying to do is, let's call it a round robin Q&A. We want this short. We want it sharp. We want it interactive. This is built on questions. So we're going to ask questions of each other. We know each other well enough to poke, but we invite you to poke along with us. Please do. It should be a relatively safe place to do it. Claire, we're safe here, aren't we? Nothing bad's going to happen. Excellent. Over to you, Barry.
Thank you very much, Eoin, and thank you very much, Claire and Lana as well, who's on the call for organising this and being on the call. And thank you very much to our presenters today for giving their time. I want to acknowledge the unsung heroes who are these experts like Eoin and Duncan, who give their time unpaid to standards and who travel off to these committees, international committee meetings, and give their time and ensure that the standards that are being developed, that they facilitate trade, that they're good for Ireland, and that Ireland's voice is heard on the international stage. So I just have a few slides to go through. I want to tell the story about standards and where we're going. So this morning, when I woke up today, my 5-year-old wanted to go to school in his superhero costume. So I had to go and look and have a look at the costume, and I had a CE mark on it. So I knew it was safe. We went down and he wanted his baby chino this morning. So we have a milk foamer. I plugged it in, I turned it on, and it worked perfectly because the wiring rules. So each of the houses in Ireland are wired to IS 101.01, which is just amended. And then I was able to drop them to school. And I was able to drop them to school knowing that I had put 20 euros of petrol into the car, and the petrol was to a standard and was going to get me the distance I was used to. So that's how standards impacted my day. From clothes you wear, from turning on your kettle in the morning to refueling your car. That's how important standards are. And I want to go through how important standards are going to be in the future. So if you have a look at this screenshot here, this is all the legislation for ICT products that are coming down the track. So you've heard of the AI Act, AI Liability Act, Cyber Resilience Act, all these different acts coming through. And what happens is, in order for you to CE mark your product and get it out to market, or even doing your procurements and making sure that you're buying something of quality, something that's going to be fit for purpose, and something that is in line with all these regulations. You use standards. Standards are a way of meeting the essential requirements in these different regulations. But how do you know? So when you buy anything, if you look at the first page of any manual, for any manual you have in your house, it has this declaration of conformity with the manufacturer and all these standards listed. Now, looking at this, you probably think this is for cattle, or that this is for, you know, a toaster or something like that. But it's actually for these autonomous mobile robotics that fly around the factory floor. So if you're looking at innovating and putting in new devices and things like that, have a look at the standards, have a look that they're safe, and they're CE marked. But also we have standards, and this one, 56001, is the International Standard for Innovation Management Systems. This is a very, very important one, and it's so important that Forbes are writing articles on it. So Forbes are saying that this is going to be what 9001 was for quality. With 9001, we all know it. It's kind of like a white van standard. You see it on all the vans that you're parked behind in traffic. We expect 56001 to revolutionize innovation, just like 9001 did for quality. It's a global recognized standard for innovation management systems, and it's good for SMEs to help get their manage over innovation, which is a beast. It enhances innovation capabilities for SMEs and can systematically manage innovation, leading to more consistent and successful outcomes. It gives a competitive edge. Implementing these standards can improve SMEs' reputation, making them more attractive to customer, partners, and investors. And collaboration and funding. The standards foster a culture of collaboration, which is very important because you need that top buy-in from management, senior management, and even from the CEO right down into innovation. And that culture as well needs to grow. So the standard helps foster this culture and help SMEs attract the funding by demonstrating their commitment to innovation. Also, risk management. It provides an approach and helps you tame the beast that is innovation by giving a structured approach. Instead, it helps SMEs manage the uncertainties associated with innovation. Now, this standard you can buy. It's out there on our shop, standards.ie. We also have an innovation webpage where you can find all about the different innovation management standards. You'll find all about the technical committee. You can read stories from Eoin and from our vice chair, Sean McNulty, writing about 56001, and just get all that good information on what's coming down the track. Now, it is so important that other government organizations like IDA are driving this and adopting it. And it's in government white paper enterprise policy. It's referred to in Impact 2030. It's going to be used, hopefully, to show Ireland's ranking. We're in the top 10 when it comes to European Innovation Scorecard, and IDA are helping to build upon it, to build in 56001. So we are a leader in this space. They've developed online tools. And also IDA and EI have developed for their clients an innovation scorecard based on 56001, which is on 5 different groups from leadership and planning, organization contacts, operation supports, elevation improvements. So this is all coming together to give it a holistic approach and to help companies manage this innovation, implement the innovation so we can become leaders in that space, so we can increase our scorecard, we can get that foreign direct investment, and also it will help companies as well to get funding, being aligned with 56001 or 56002 or any in this innovation series. And this is how it all comes together. So summary slide, standards to simplify. So embracing established standards streamlines research processes. So you're not reinventing the wheel. If you're using what's already out there, it helps. It helps consistent compliance. So align with industry standards ensures data accuracy and comparability. And we have influential impact. And this is what Eoin, and I want to thank Eoin and all the other experts on our committee. They're doing so much influential impact and they're representing Ireland at an international level. They're showcasing Irish SMEs and the clients and everyone they work at, and they're feeding into the standards and showing how Ireland is a leader in the space and what we can do. And the last one as well is there's a lot of information going down. We have additive manufacturing committees, we've robot committees, we've everything. And if you sign up for our NSAI eZine magazine, you'll get access to all this information. And that's there for you to sign off. So just a quick thank you very much for your attention. That's just a quick go through. And I'll take questions now from Eoin in the Q&A. So thank you very much. I'll stop sharing.
Brilliant, Barry. That's fantastic. Now, I know that you work in the public service, but a lot of the NSAI's clients are not necessarily in the public service. What would you say the balance is?
Oh God, mostly not in the public service. We're trying to have a balance with our committees. So we're
Yeah.
trying to have SMEs to have the voice of the SMEs. We're trying to have the voice of the researchers. We're trying to get the voice of the multinationals. We're trying to get the voice of the regulators. And it's all about knowledge. So knowledge is power in this day and age. And rather than reinventing the wheel, reinventing practices, the EU Commission have a code of practice now on standardization because it's so important.
Yeah.
And other countries as well, you have to pay to play. So you have to pay to join their national standards body. In Ireland, it's free. So it's free to join. We have the committees and you get access to the standards before they develop. You can implement them so that when you're at a high TRL level or ready to go or buy a new product that's in from the market, you know the latest on the AI Act, you know the latest on the Cyber Resilience Act, you know what's coming down. Even when it comes to sustainability, all these standards are linked with the UN sustainability goals, which is very important for CSRD reporting. So we have a lot of sole traders, SMEs, multinationals, consultants like yourself who are fabulous and fighting the good fight. So thank you.
So if we look at the way this thing is done, the one we're discussing today is 56001, which is a requirement standard for innovation management. Any organization that wants to set up an innovation management system, that's written by, the world of innovation. It's written also by public servants for public servants. So we have public servants on our advisory committee. Without giving too much away, can you share who those people are or where they come from?
Oh yes, we have leaders from Enterprise Ireland. We have leaders within IP, intellectual property within Enterprise Ireland, within doing the innovation scorecard and helping companies innovate from the IDA as well. And they've taken these standards as well, which is great to see. And they use it as a tool. And they're using these scorecards and frameworks and applying this. We have people from the Intellectual Property Office. We've people from Deeper. We have people from DETI. We have a wide experts across the whole public service, which is great to see that there's a will to innovate across the public service, and also that they're using the knowledge valorization that you experts and the international experts are putting standards, and they're adopting it and they're using it and they're tailoring their procedures and processes to it, and they're building upon it and building great, like the scorecards that you fed into.
Yeah, thanks for that. And then if we look at those names of the people that we can imagine filling those chairs in the committee, that gives the opportunity for public servants to design this standard so that it is useful for and used by public servants. Now, Duncan, of course, is a public servant, so he's going to give us a little bit of that public service innovation perspective. But Barry, in your role, are you able to see how public servants might actually use this themselves? You know what I'm like, so I will speak to it. But do you have any thoughts yourself?
Yes, from it's great to see it. Like the public service are going to use it. They're going to try and get accredited to it. To try and get certified to it. So at the moment as well, there's even NSAI is running in conjunction with RISE to get the experts certified as an expert in innovation management, so that these guys can come along. They will help apply the standard and get certified to it, which will help tame it. That's the ultimate badge they want, is this certification to the system, so that it can show and be leaders in this space and improve our European scorecard for innovation.
Cool.
Thanks, Barry. This is really great to hear. Could you tell us a little bit more about the innovation scorecard and how that might be applied in a management or even a leadership role, where you're trying to develop a new piece of work and you just want to try and standardize or approach it with good practice and utilize the resources that you've listed out there?
Yeah, it's great to see. So when 56002 was published, we had members of the committee who went off and took it upon themselves with this series of standards and develop a scorecard that focuses on 5 of the key groups of innovation management. align with the 56,000 series. So their leadership, your contacts, your operation, your support, evaluation, improvements, and these elements are their interactions are needed for an organization to establish its innovation capabilities for the purpose of effective and sustaining achieving innovation. And the last section relates to a high level of analysis of your company's current position on digital transformation, talent, and sustainability. And all these fall kind of around the scope of the 6,000 series, but they're included in kind of the report you get to gain these valuable insights. The report allows leaders to take a holistic review of the areas in their organizations. And based on your assessment of these areas, the personalized reports offer suggestions and actions you can take and potentially support resources that can be accessed in the context of your company. So both EI and IDA are doing this, which is fantastic.
Thanks, Barry.
So, Barry, if I ask you an awkward question. So our topic, our title is about leadership. And okay, today we're talking innovation and of course, transformation leadership. So how do you see, it may be not what your career has led you to for today, but how do you see that the 56001 standard would be useful to leaders?
It helps them see the bigger picture. It helps them see and take into account of all the elements with innovation because there's so many key elements, and helps provide them with an understanding of it. And also by becoming familiar with these standards and working with these standards, there is certification aligned to this 56,000 series. You can get accredited, which is an extra notch on your belt that will help your career development. It will also help as well when it comes to companies now in the future, which Forbes are saying, like 56,001 is going to revolutionize innovation. The leaders will be familiar with it and be able to help companies align to it and get certified to it and gain that experience as well, which is going to be well worthwhile. Because there's so many standards out there from 27,001 and 56,001. And it gives leaders just that overall approach and how to do it.
Brilliant, Barry. Just one more question, and then it's poor Duncan's time to get up on stage. Again, totally awkward, poking and prodding, which is my want. You'll have spotted that over the years. So can you see the odd challenge? Can you see how it won't always be plain sailing for public servants looking to use this standard?
Yes. There isn't. So unlike other multinationals, unlike kind of medical devices where you have to be aligned to standards, especially for manufacturers, there's 9001 you have to be aligned to, there's other standards. But for the public service, this may be the first standard to do in the Plan, Do, Check, Act. So it's going to be a whole new approach to put on a management system, to put your procedures in place, to show, to get that standard and highlight all the shelves and prove as well when you're being audited that you're doing this, and also that you're continually improving about this. Because what I love about this 56,001 is that you get certified to it, yes, but you have to show the continual improvement to be recertified. You have to show how you're improving on the system. You have to prove how you're innovating. You have to prove it, and this is the big thing. And this has helped manufacturing systems, and it helped everyone, because now when you buy something that has a CE mark, you know it's going to work. You know it's not going to shock you. And it's going to be the same kind of approach that when you see a company with 56,001, the investors, the researchers, and everyone, they want to get engaged with you. They'll want that because they'll know of this quality mark, and they'll know that you're keen, and they'll know that you'll have the ability to innovate.
Brilliant, Barry. That's fantastic. We've used our 20 minutes. Thanks very much. So
Thank you,
it's
Eoin.
probably time for Duncan to get moving. Just a reminder to everybody, what we're trying to do in each 15-minute round is have a little bit of a talk by the expert, followed by a couple of Q&As. We're just trying to make sure we can link in concrete and sensible ways for you. Leadership, innovation leadership, public service, of course, how the ISOs might help, what the news is, and when it's my turn, we'll get into the innards of this particular standard. So Barry, thank you very much. Duncan, over to you.
Thank you, Eoin, and thank you also, Barry and Claire, and for the invitation, and thanks to everybody online for joining the session today. So I was given the job of representing the public sector, not a minor thing to do, of course. Very proud to be a public servant. I just want to give you a little bit of a background to the overall context for revenues involvement in international capacity building, the work that I've been doing for the last couple of years, and the objective of the work is to help less developed countries to increase the effectiveness of their tax and customs administrations. And this work is carried out in collaboration with colleagues in Department of Foreign Affairs, including Irish Aid, and our overseas and Department of Finance as well. So this is part of Ireland's overseas development policy, A Better World, which was launched late in 2019. Now there was a sort of a hiatus there with the lockdown, etc., but we're back up and running again. So it's a whole of government agenda, and that is a good way of going about things. And it is, of course, connected to the Sustainable Development Goals, which Barry mentioned earlier on as well. So the aim of the work is to increase the contribution of taxes and duties compared to other sources of income like aid and grants and loans that developing countries may get as a source of funding for those developing countries. And this is to help them with their domestic resource mobilization agenda. And I was trying to avoid jargon, but that is an important term. Domestic resource or domestic revenue mobilization, or DRM for short. It's a big part of the picture. And so the work we're doing is DRM focused. So a large part of this work is to identify and match specific expertise that we have in revenue, within revenue, with the areas of assistance that these partner countries have identified as areas that they really need some help in. And there's a wide range of different areas that they're looking for assistance in within the tax and customs space. So the idea is to build and strengthen their own administration in these key areas that they identify. And also part of the job is to coordinate with other development partners, both other development partner countries and regional international organizations, to make sure there's no duplication of effort, to make sure things are coordinated and collaborative. So in support of this work, then we participate in international networks such as the OECD's capacity building network, which is currently very ably chaired by the UK. And we're working bilaterally with a number of different countries in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. And we've worked collaboratively with development partners such as the World Bank Group, the IMF, and the OECD. So we've hosted in-person visits from partner countries, and we've also hosted a lot of online webinars with several partner jurisdictions. And as our bilateral capacity building relationships continue to develop, these events and activities are increasing. And that's all part of maybe where what Barry's been talking about will come in to help a lot, is how you put structure around all of this sort of work. I'll come back to that in a minute. Just an example, maybe some of the work we're doing at the moment. We've agreed on a program of work with the Uganda Revenue Authority. So we've both hosted a visit from them last year, and we visited them in person in February this year, where we signed a letter of agreement which outlines the relationship between our two administrations. And we're working through a program of work in relation to that now. So the revenue staff and the guys who work with me, I call them experts. They may not always like that, but they are in their various areas. They've gained valuable experience and benefit from these relationships. And we're committed to building further on our contribution to Ireland's overseas development work. But the effort that the experts put in, and it's often quite considerable, is very much appreciated. So just looking at the ISO and guidance, and in relation to things like innovation scorecards and guidance for leaders and managers, I think this really fits in quite well with this sort of work. It's a relatively new area for Ireland, although other countries have been out for an awful lot longer. I think we all learn from sharing experiences with each other, but having a set of standards that you can refer to, I think, has a lot of value. And as part of the work I mentioned earlier on, we work with Finance and Foreign Affairs. We have a domestic resource mobilization working group, and I'll certainly be bringing this up as an item for the agenda for our next meeting. We meet several times a year, and there's also a senior officials group which meets annually to approve the overall business plan and the overall direction of the work. But within revenue, my unit is what leads on this work from this particular focus on the DRM with the developing countries piece. And so the work is structured in three areas. To summarize, it's developing that internal capacity. That's getting the networks of experts together, communicating with them and organizing them. And that includes developing documentation and guidance material for the experts. And I think the ISO materials could certainly feed into that sort of thing. The second part, I've mentioned the bilateral relationships with the partner countries. And I'm sure a lot of the partner countries would be interested in hearing more about these standards. Very often what we often do is point partners to existing resources that are online already. They just they can leverage those as well themselves. And then finally, again, that multilateral relationship piece, in participating in international forums and the networks that support this sort of work, I think that all needs to be or can be tied together quite well. I would also like to mention that I met Eoin through an event that was organised by my innovation colleagues in revenue, and then subsequently got involved with the Innovate Ireland network that Eoin is a large part of, co-founder of, which has continues to amaze me how useful it is. Every time I join one of the calls that they organise, I get some new piece of information, and I think ISO 56001 is a good example of that. So I'll pause there. Thanks very much.
That's fantastic, Duncan. Thanks for the shout out in Innovate Ireland. We have done sessions like this with public service transformation team several times, and we always say, please come and join us. And we always get joiners, and they stick around. So someone thinks someone's getting some fun or value out of Innovate Ireland. And of course, because Duncan and I got to know each other at an event like this and see each other on a Friday at Innovate Island sessions, it was a natural thing for me to turn to Duncan, because we know each other well enough to probably punch each other in the shoulder and more. What you can see I did was I gathered all the people with beards in one room for this session.
Yeah, white beards.
Yeah. But I know some of Duncan's history with innovation. For example, the innovation of the air code. For example, the work that he's calling out here with Uganda. So it leaves me a couple of obvious, but of course they're awkward questions, because you have met me.
Yeah.
So if we're leading, where are we leading, and what way are we leading Uganda? What are we doing that's leadership in this respect?
Well, I probably should mention that again, that the relationships we're developing are bilateral relationships, but they need to be mutually beneficial. I think for them really to work. And one of the pieces that's a really difficult part of the job is the monitoring, evaluation, and learning piece. And I think Barry referred to performance management and evaluation as part of those 5 areas, is it, in the scorecard, Barry? So that's something I'm really interested in. The capacity building network that I mentioned at the OECD has been talking about this, and it's a really, really difficult part of the work. How do you know that the impact of the work that you've done has made a difference, and maybe a year's time has it made a difference, or in 3 years' time has it made a difference? So in the Uganda context, we are working with some partners there as well who have a lot of expertise in that space, and I think that's a really good means for us to learn how to approach the monitoring, evaluation, and learning side of the work, which you have to do. But like I said, it's not an easy thing to do. So that's a live piece of work. So I think I could definitely learn from the likes of the ISO 56001 in relation to that space. So leading is that, well, I think what would probably more accurately to say that we're sharing our experiences and stories. We're certainly not telling anybody what to do. All we're doing is telling them how we've done something, and perhaps telling them that we might have done something slightly differently now that we know what we know. But
so can I step in with a question?
Yeah, please.
You're leading each other. It's bipartisan. Everybody's, both parties and multiple parties are learning. Yeah. So it's the kind of situation where you know exactly what you need to do ahead of time. You know exactly how you're going to do it, and you know exactly when it's done, and you know exactly when it works. Or is there uncertainty involved in these projects?
Well, that's one of the challenges for sure. Is that first of all, it's a long-term piece of work.
Yeah,
you got to stick with it for some time, and there are opportunities for improving things and adjusting as you go through the project with people. But sometimes you might have to readjust and reset. There could be a change in personnel on either side. You might lose an expert with staff churn on either side of the process.
How do you adapt to that? How do you manage?
Communication is important. Keep in contact with people, and always try and have a single contact person who you can then work with and ensure that the right people are in the room.
So it doesn't happen by accident, then, we might say.
You have to be actively in touch with people, and proactive as well. And there can be multiple stakeholders involved, so you have to manage that process too.
So my questions are putting words in your mouth. Apologies, but one of them was uncertainty. What about measurement? I think you've covered.
Yeah, well, you're into that outcome versus output piece. So, how many visits did you conduct? How many did you host? How many webinars did you have? That's fine. But what was the impact of those activities? What did the other side change in the way they go about things? How did that improve things?
Yeah.
There are measures that people use. We don't have the time to get into them now, I suppose. But
no, but if I ask you a follow-up poking question again, if I ask you to describe your approach, it's not garbage. It's not random. How would you describe your approach?
Yeah, it is quite structured, and there's guidance available from the OECD, which we use, and I've been drawing up all my own internal guidance for experts as well, leveraging that. And there is a logical process. You look at the overall political economic circumstances. You look at if the country has a DRM policy. You look at the diagnostic tools that are available, about how the state of the revenue or tax administration is currently. You coordinate with your other partners to see what work they're doing, no duplication, and then look at the capacity internally in your own organization to see if you can facilitate that request.
Now, one of the really interesting things I'm hearing in the answer is you're not just bringing someone to what we did last year, you're bringing someone to what they might be able to do in 3, 4, 5 years, which should be ahead of where we are now. You're not just bringing them to the current, you're bringing them to the future.
Yeah, well, you do have to have that longer term view for sure. And I think it's fair to say, revenue is well respected, but we're not top of the pops in everything. I think we're very good in many, many areas. And the idea is to match that expertise with the demands that partner countries have, and hopefully exchange things of value. And like I said, learn both ways.
Okay, that's fantastic. I wonder, Barry, do you have any questions for Duncan?
I do. Duncan was mentioned about the OECD, and I know that they have written articles and they have published papers on standards and for SMEs and how that they affect them. And they have some really good articles in saying and that we're kind of leaders in this space, and it's good for SMEs and a knowledge tool. So it's great that standards are being recognized as well at an OECD level and nationally by Duncan. And Duncan, I want to know as well, there's a lot of questions from our committee as well about different tax credits and revenue tax credits for innovation and research and things like that. Do you foresee coming down the road, especially for innovation tax credits, that being aligned with 56,001 would help facilitate the process to apply for any of these tax credits?
I'd have to take that one away, Barry. I mean, I would have thought that there'd be no harm, but I mean, a lot of that stuff, it would be on the policy side of things. So I think I mentioned earlier on, finance would handle decisions around the changes in policy to tax, whereas revenue administers those changes. So we would certainly advise finance and the government on any changes to policy. And there would be not a lot of quantitative analyses done, for example, to advise on what the impact of something like that might be. But those things would be decided on the finance side. We do have colleagues from finance helping with capacity building work. We had a visit from Vietnam in June this year, and the colleagues from finance gave their presentations and expertise from the policy side of things. So there's a whole of government approach, as I said, to this work. It's not just the administration of tax and customs; it's also the formulation of policy. And how policy is formed in Ireland as a whole is an interesting story. It's very collaborative. There's a lot of stakeholders are involved. There's a lot of interaction between the various stakeholders, which is a good story to tell. So we share that story.
And I think it's brilliant as well from a government perspective. We have open public consultations, so Daddy and Deepa will put up any policies or documents that would come up. There's one on the AI Act and the implementation of it that was up for public consultation that we could feed into it. So I think it's a great tool for our public service to have all these policy documents and open consultations they can put in. And as well, when I'm looking at these as well, I'm also looking at the OECD, because they're saying as well that to increase policy attention to the role of adopting and developing international standards can play in enhancing SME productivity. So I always kind of reference that when it comes to policy as well and try and get that into it. But I think it's great the work you're doing and the policy that's coming out from it.
Thanks, Barry. I mean, definitely there's a huge resource there online from the OECD. They have maturity models. I think you mentioned digital transformation there at one point. They have a digital transformation maturity model for revenue administrations, tax administrations. They have, enterprise risk, management maturity models. There's a whole load of resources there that people can leverage and use. And so oftentimes it's just about linking people up to those resources and letting them know where they are, and they can then take them and run with them.
Brilliant.
Exactly.
In terms of timing there, Barry, I think we're just bang on now. So before we move on, the next person is me. It'll take me a minute to set up. Apologies. Claire, any thoughts from your side, or is there anything in Q&A that we need to take immediate attention to?
There's one question in the Q&A. It's how do we apply standards to local authorities in respect of processes, given that historically SOPs and processes are siloed within an organisation? Are local authorities a service to which we can apply 56,000?
Okay. I'm certain I can provide a comment to that, but Barry, you must have seen comments like that before.
I have, and the best thing you to do is actually contact. So contact info@nsai.ie, and we can give you the time. So there's different standards officers that can go there and go through the standards in that specific area, and also the certification. So to advise you, there's another part of NSAI, the commercial side, which does certification of the different standards, and there's different toolkits as well for the different standards for 27,001, for 9,001, and information there. At the end of the day, we're here to help you, and don't be shy. Please email us at info@nsai.ie, and we'll return back to you and give you that information. Thank you.
Brilliant, Barry. And from my perspective, I can add that I have done that work with local authorities in the past. So absolutely, local authorities are fertile ground for example, lean. So the question is, are you looking to look at what you're currently doing, effectively looking down, and do you want to improve that? Or is your focus on, oh my God, I wonder what else we could be doing, something terribly new and totally wonderful, in which case you're looking at innovation. So if you're talking about lean and existing qualities, you're talking about applying ISO 9001. If you're talking about real novelty, a large amount of change, or the example that Duncan gave us where there's a high degree of uncertainty, 56,001 is the standard for you. And yes, it's easily applicable by a local authority, or in fact by an organization as small as one lady and her cat. The great thing about a small organization is the amount of time that they really should give something like 56,001 is 5 minutes a week, because that's a scale for that organization. And I've done it with organizations that scale, and it can easily be done for 9,000 or for 56,000. Okay, so if there are no other questions immediately on Q&A, it's going to take me a minute to set up. So we're going to have me setting up in the background. Barry, did you have any further questions for Duncan while I'm doing that?
Just with all your expertise and in this kind of area, what impactful impact do you see standards and 56 may play in the future with going to these international meetings and having these international partnership and kind of promoting Ireland as a leader in this space and safe to invest in?
Well, I think what the role I'm involved in at the moment is the capacity building role, which is where we provide our stories and our experiences and our knowledge with the partners that we work with. And as part of that job, we do leverage internationally respected resources, including things like the ISO standards and guidance in the course of the work that we do. So obviously the work you're referring to there it's not tied down to any particular area. As Eoin says, it could be a very small operation where it's still applicable, or a very large operation. But I think there are specific resources that I would refer our colleagues to, training resources and other resources that are available online. There's a training resource called Vitara, which is hosted by the IMF, which is a very good resource for training officers and staff in revenue administrations. But there's no reason why we wouldn't refer colleagues to things like the ISO 5601 in the course of the work that we do, because it's probably just a very good distillation of common sense as much as anything, right? So why would you reinvent the wheel if there's a good guide there that is as applicable to capacity building and revenue administrations as it is to making sure your small operation runs smoothly at an SME level? Then you leverage the asset that's there.
Very good. So great question, Barry. Thanks for that. Duncan, you managed to survive being put on the spot there. So I'm ready to start with slides. You should be looking at a nice blank one for the moment. But before I dive into the slides, I think I can add a couple of references, resources that maybe, Barry, you can find while I'm yapping on over a few minutes. One, there is an OECD OPSI Innovation Toolkit. OPSI. Okay, that's a great link for any public servant. 2, I happen to know that Bord Iascaigh Mhara produced their own toolkit for innovators, and it's really, really brilliant. And it's available as a PDF from Bord Iascaigh Mhara. 3, the UK government recently produced a futures toolkit going to exactly the example that we were discussing with Uganda from Duncan's story. And a colleague of mine saw that and said the first thing they should do is apply it themselves, which is a bit of a dig, but it was meant in good humor. So the UK government's futures toolkit is also really useful. And the other thing I think it's useful to put up, if we have the time to find this and share it with everybody, Barry, is that we're talking about 56,001 standards as if it was this mysterious, marvelous book. Well, I'm going to show it to you in a minute. But also, half of it is available free. So anybody can find all the terms and conditions and all the key concepts free of charge, because there's a thing called the online browsing platform that anybody can use anytime. So Barry, if you're able to share that link during today's session, that's great. And if we don't manage that, what we might do is share that via Claire after the session anyway. Okay, yeah. So thanks for looking for that, Barry. And Barry is a whole lot faster at this stuff than me, so he might get it done lickety-split. Claire, before I start any thoughts from your perspective from the Transformation Week, how it's progressed, any stories or things that we should be thinking about?
I would say the main question that's been coming up is how to tap into the SME market. I suppose civil and public servants typically would be using the e-tenders route mainly, or the kind of 3 quotes, and at that you're going out to 3 companies and that's it. So to tap into that SME market and to just, it's a totally untapped place. So how do we do that if they're not on e-tenders?
Yeah, but what I'm understanding is that a lot of public servants are wondering how they can give more small and micro enterprises the chance to engage the public sector. Okay, that's a really different focus from what we were talking about in this session, but really, really useful. And absolutely e-tenders, or what a lot of small enterprises will do is they'll cuddle up to a big organization. So the larger organization will be on framework agreements, and the smaller organization will come in as a subcontractor under a large organization. Another avenue that people can explore is through their LEOs, so the local enterprise offices, or their community and enterprise centers. And there you find people who are used to navigating public and private pathways, so they can help the parties come together, and they can keep it simple because they're dealing with people who don't have time. So hopefully that's useful comment to that question, Claire.
Yeah,
okay, if everybody's ready, we're going to dive into 56,001. We don't have time. And you don't want to be buried in it, so we're not going to go too deep. What I would like to start by saying, though, is we need to consider why. Why would anybody, never mind a harassed public servant, want to use these things? Well, I think we probably need to have a look inside these things to answer that question. And it probably also makes sense to frame the question. How might we use 56,001 to help us lead? Well, what do we mean lead? Well, actually, Duncan's session was brilliant in that respect. We're talking about what do you do when you've got uncertainty, when you've got a lot of learning to do before you do something. You don't know if it'll work or not, never mind whether it's going to be risky or not. So you need to learn. You need to find out how to do something new and to make it happen. The other thing we need to consider is the difference between having a pet cat, that tiny organization I was referring to with one cat, and actually the cat minds itself, or herding wild horses. And although people think innovation is an easy word to understand, innovation management is herding wild horses. That's why we're talking about 56,001, because you need something. And 56,001 is the global best practice on how you herd wild horses, how you keep innovation going as an innovator, a professional, as a leader of a team, and as a leader in an organization. And what do we mean in a concrete term by innovation here? Well, we might mean providing active, visible, and ongoing long-term sponsorship to initiatives that are happening, not dropping them after the first pilot isn't quite as successful as people hoped. We mean developing the capabilities of individuals, but not just training, because training absent of practice is a waste of money and time. We need to develop the practical capabilities, practical knowledge, knowing how to do and experience of doing it, not just academic knowledge, knowing about how it is done according to academia. We're not trying to down academia. We're highlighting here that there's a combination of perspectives that make sense. And the 56,001 is exactly that. This is the combined experience of 5,000 innovation professionals, academics, consultants, public servants, people who work inside organizations with innovation as a title, or people who just have to do some innovating for whatever purpose. And the focus is, how do you help an organization to do it more than once? How do you make innovation sustainable? Okay, so that's a big answer, or a big part of the answer to why we might use it. Okay, let's have a quick look at what it is. I need longer arms. Two images that might be familiar to you. I'll give you a second just to consider if you have it in mind, a clear idea of what these are. One, very, very old. One, just very old. One about 3,500 years old. One about 2,000 years old. The one on the left is the Rosetta Stone, by the way, if it's not familiar to you visually. And imagine the world before the Rosetta Stone. The best minds in the world couldn't figure out how to interpret and translate different classical languages. And with one stone, they had a hook and a link, and they could start to break up that challenge. You know, we're talking cliches about big, huge challenge, elephant in the room, small slices. The Rosetta Stone allowed people to get in there and start breaking it up and making it sensible and making it manageable. The 56,001 standard does exactly that for innovation leaders. It helps them to see the elements and to combine them and to see them as a system. I sometimes quote one of my favorite authors. It's on the shelf back here. Donella Meadows, Thinking in Systems, a primer. If you want an easy way in to understand this, go buy that book. The other thing to do is, now my picture on screen might be tiny, but this is ISO 56001. What you might like to compare it with is a business book, or the texts that a lot of innovation courses are built on, which are typically 300 to 400 pages each, and you probably have 10 or 15 texts if you do a reasonable level course. This is 20 pages. This is really easy to access, and Barry's going to show you where you can find it, the online browsing platform, and hopefully Barry will also have the time to show you where you can buy it on, for example, the NSAI's shop. Okay, really easy to access. And the first part of it, with all the terms and definitions, the basic concepts, it's free of charge. It's that easy to do. Okay. The second image on the screen is a Roman standard, the Aquila. So when we say standard, we don't just mean technical document that bores you to tears, but is really good if you want to fall asleep at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We mean it's really important that we get this right. What does a kilogram mean? Or how do I know that a pencil will actually write, or a plug will actually go into the socket? Or in our case in innovation, how do we know that we can actually be successful with innovation more than once at any kind of scale? That's what we mean by a standard for innovation. However, innovation has no requirements. How would you require innovation? What does that mean? It doesn't have requirements, but it has uncertainty. So innovation management means, and I'm quoting here from the standards, excuse me, it's not long. I won't keep you long with this. 8 principles of innovation management. 1, you organize this about outputs, outcomes, impacts. You realize value. 2, it's about the future, not 3 minutes into the future. That's what operational excellence is about. It's 3 years, it's 5 years, it's 10 years into the future. If you do not raise your ambitions and look for transformation, or what they call Horizon 3 breakthrough radical innovations, you are wasting your time. You're doing the same thing that everybody else does. 3, you need a clear strategy, clear direction. That comes from the top. How does ISO 56000 help leaders? It helps you to develop a clear strategy with account of futures, with account of trends, with account of key drivers that are happening currently or coming your way over the next few years. And there's a few more I won't speak to in detail. Enable the right culture for innovation, clear responsibility of leaders there, exploit insights, manage uncertainty. Funnily enough, that theme has come up a number of times. You adapt and you adopt. So you have to be adaptable, agility for the organization, perhaps. And you have to approach it systematically, or it doesn't work, you fail. If you don't approach innovation systematically, you are one of the thousands and thousands of organizations that stays in the dummies class. You can't be too kind about it. If you want to use innovation successfully, you can't just play with it. You've got to dive in and do it right. Okay, so I don't have many slides. I'm just going to show you a couple more, and then we'll finish up. We talked about the innards. And on the slide here, and actually on the wall behind Duncan's head, we've got a couple of variations of the model that we use when we as innovation professionals are trying to see, where is this innovator? Where are they now? Where do they want to get to? What help do they need? Do they know what help they need? Do they even know where they are? Well, that's what these models do. And the pink one on the left-hand side of the slide, that is the structure of 56001. If you want to implement 56001, that means you have to have a clear idea of your context, SWOT analysis, pestle analysis. You have to have the right kind of leadership in place. You have to do a lot of planning, a la Uganda. And you have to have really clear processes. And they don't just start with ideas. They start with identifying, in terms of the cloud of opportunities and challenges that are around you, where do we want to play? Why do we want to play? What does good look like? Do our leaders agree where we're going? Which 3, not 17, priorities are we going to focus our efforts on? And then you got your ideation, then you got your selection and validation, then you got your development of solutions, and then you've got your deployment of solutions. So these are the processes of innovation. And the problem with innovators is they're met with a barrage of brands from consultants. And this strips all of that away. It's all totally transparent. And you can hold your accountant or your consultant or your innovation department or your innovation leader to account. If you are not doing these things, you are not doing your job. So do you need innovation? Yes. Do you need to do it more than once? Yes. Then you need a system. You might not need certification, but then you need a system. And the best guide in the world is 56001, with its 5,000 experts involvement, with its validation by 100+ countries to date. And it's going to be a gift that keeps on giving. The impact of this is going to snowball for decades to come. Okay. The impact of ISO 9001 is still growing 45 years after the first version was introduced. On the right-hand side, Barry, this is a picture that shows all of the standards that have been published in the family of 56,000 to date. Now, for today, it's not going to help people much. All I wanted to show you is there are standards that are about your context outside the organization. There are standards about the organization itself, primarily 56,000, basic fundamentals, concepts, and how to do it right, the innovation management system. And then there are smaller supporting standards, how to manage ideas, how to manage partnerships, how to manage IP. And we've just started one last week in Lima, Peru, where an Irish colleague of mine and Barry's is leading the project for the whole globe to create a competency framework standard for innovation. So Ireland is the leader there. We're not the leader in a lot of other areas. You can see that by looking at Innovation Index, but we have an example of what good looks like. We are the leader here. We can extend and apply that example elsewhere. Okay, it helps to have a little bit of ambition, as I said.
Okay. I just want to let you know I put all those links in the Q&A. So the links that you're talking about for your browsing platform.
You're just showing off now, Barry. You're just showing off. There's nothing else I can say to that. Okay, exactly. All I want to show here is, by the way, folks, there's momentum behind this. The whole world is moving this way, and it's very early days, but private and public organizations are starting to implement 56001 and seek certification already. That won't mature for a couple of years, but it's happening already. Finally, we mentioned the scorecard. Now, the person who developed the scorecard at the time worked for Enterprise Ireland, and I advised him on that because he knew I'd spent 30 years working with these damned things. So between us, with an understanding of the standards and an understanding of the public service and of the micro SME environment, we were able to produce 3 different versions of the scorecard, one by Enterprise Ireland, one that was adopted and then adapted by IDA, which is the one that Chantel Kiernan has shared with me for today. Chantel is the chair of the committee that we keep referring to, the Advisory Committee for Innovation Standards. And of course, Public Service have their own version of this scorecard. Claire, I don't think you call it the Innovation Scorecard in your setup. Do you know what you're calling it at the moment?
We did, but we've discontinued it because there are other ones on the market. So we had the Our Public Service Strategy, which has since been replaced with the Better Public Service Strategy, and we've kind of discontinued it now. So we would recommend people use the IDA one or the Enterprise Ireland one.
Yeah, and there are many others on the market. One of the reasons that I did the work with David is because I've been using these tools for a decade, and one of the ones we based that on is on the wall beside me. So there are plenty of them out there. Yeah. Good comment, Claire. Thanks for that. Okay, so we are done with presenting for the day. What I wanted to do is show you one last slide, which is simply Innovate Ireland. This is the club, the community, the network of professionals, north and south, educators, academics, consultants, everybody who's interested in innovation. And Duncan, you're very kind to comment earlier. That was very, very helpful. All I want to do at the end is simply reconfirm that invite to everybody. Come and join us. Easy to find, innovateisland.net, utterly uncommercial. You find people crying, complaining, offering solutions, recommending tools and techniques and websites and authors and so on. And we go up and down from totally trivial to earth-shattering and back again to toilet humor. It's the nature of the beast. So we're done. Claire, thanks for your time. I don't know, Claire, if you've got any last-minute comments before we finish up.
No, it's just to say if anybody needs to get in contact with us, you'll find all of our details on gov.ie/transformation, and you have the guys' details as well if you need to contact them. So feel free to reach out. We're all available.
Lovely, that's great, Claire. And Barry, do you want to tell people about the NSAI's TC45 and how people can find out about the NSAI?
Yeah, so from our website, nsai.ie is there. I put in a link as well. We've got a kind of a page dedicated to innovation management and news. So that link I'll put in the Q&A. Committees are free for anyone in Ireland to join once you're residents within Ireland. In other countries, you have to pay to join standards committees. But in Ireland, the government have recognised it, and we have a grant. We're funded by government, so anyone can come in and join a committee and get that knowledge, unlock that knowledge, valorisation, save you from reinventing the wheel, get the latest information on machinery regulations, directive, innovation, you name it. It's there at your fingertips because knowledge is the new gold.
Brilliant, Barry. Thank you very much. And Duncan, can we give the last word to you?
Oh, I know what's on my reading list anyway.
It's 20 pages. It won't take you that long.
There we go.
Well done, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for joining. Much appreciated. Claire, thanks for all your help. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Well done, Barry. Thanks for that.
Thanks.
Everything worked as planned.
Yeah, it did, which is brilliant. It did. Thank you very much. I'll just stop the record now. Lovely. Yeah, thanks.